All right, so today we are going to focus on drawing a skull, right? This is Scully. I keep him on my piano, her on my piano, them on my piano. As you can see, their jaw's a little crooked, but this is the fake anatomically correct skull that I use to take pictures for your setups, and I'm going to do some demonstrations on skull proportions so that we are gonna be all set for drawing tomorrow. All right, I'm gonna start with my Vine charcoal. Now you can work reductively or additively, as always, whatever your preference is based on the images that I have. What I'm gonna be going over is how to draw your skull proportions today. So we can see Scully is right next to us, and I'm gonna keep messing with its jaw. I'm gonna try and tilt it up so you can kind of see it. First, I'm gonna show you how to draw a skull kind of straight on or at a slight angle, which means kind of like 3/4 view. Now, a skull can be broken down into kind of two basic shapes. It's always a circle, right? And then there's kind of a rectangle that comes off of it. Okay? Now I'm going to draw through the skull and kind of try to get my cross lines. And by cross lines, I mean my lines that show chin like straight up and down through, across the eyes, across the nose, and across the mouth. You'll see that when I'm drawing it here. So this is, you know, forehead to chin. Eyes, nose, mouth. Okay, this is what I mean by blocking in shapes quickly, right? I start with a circle here, kind of a trapezoid that comes off of it, and then I move in with lines very, very quickly. Now from that point on, I'm gonna start finding some of my more basic shapes. So for example, an oval for my nose, two holes for the sockets, and then I'm gonna kind of try to just make gestures for where the jawbone is, these shapes right here, right? These are the big shapes that I'm looking for, okay? I kind of always shift it a little bit. Now you want to make sure that you're measuring because this is going to have some foreshortening. It's going to go back in space, right? So you're going to see that I'm going to start kind of trying to solidify where my round shapes are. I'm not going to worry about teeth yet, okay? I'm more concerned with making sure that I'm getting my shapes correct, right? Because like I said, you know, no amount of details, like really well-rendered teeth, are going to fix having your jawbone being completely off ground or off base. So I'm just kind of making really sketchy marks, and I can have lines for like where my teeth are, right? Like I know that's where they're going to go eventually. But I'm still just kind of focusing on making quick shapes. Now, when it gets to an area like this, right, we talk about things like positive space being where the bone is and negative space being where the empty space is. So in a moment like what I'm drawing down here, it becomes, and see, I'm shifting my perspective a lot, which you won't be able to do because you'll have a photo. That'll be a little easier. is that I start measuring my negative space. So you can see on here that these don't touch, but in my drawing they do. So now I know that by measuring that negative space, right, that I can get my perspective more accurate. And I'm going to shade it in kind of quickly because I'm just making sure I get things where they're supposed to be. All right, things like changing the oval of the nose to, right, more of a upside down heart shape. Kind of putting in some shadows for where my eye sockets are. All right, and now I know I'm going quickly, but I'm gonna do this again from some different angles because I'm just kind of trying to show you how to sketch anatomy correctly, right? So this is like a 3/4 view. If I was doing something straight on, right, which I don't think there's any pictures of it straight on, sometimes it's easier to start with your vertical lines. Your circle, that's this part of the skull, right, back here. This top half is your circle. This bottom half, your jawbone, is your kind of a trapezoid that comes off of it. So I'm gonna tilt this up. I've drawn a lot of skulls, so I think I can do it kind of almost a little bit without it. I'll kind of shift it back and forth. Now I can see that these shapes move out. All right, these shapes are what I'm looking at. That's my jawbone. I'm gonna do things like make sure I know where my teeth are, where my nose is, measuring my nose, seeing that it hits at the same point as these jawbones, right? Measuring where my eyes are, and then seeing that that comes up to a point. And then I can do a little oval. All right, quick shapes for where the skeleton's face is. Now I'm gonna start again, you know, it's always the 3 lines, well, 4 lines for my axes, right? The vertical is forehead to chin center. First line is your eyes, second line is your nose, third line is your mouth. First line is your eyes, second line is your nose, third line is your mouth, and then your vertical, right? Once you have those in place, then you can start looking for your negative space. Negative space, once again, being whoop, whoop, these cheekbones. Okay. You can shade in those spaces if you feel comfortable with it. Just working quickly, right? We're having a little bit less time to work on this project. And so I'm just kind of working fast to lay in where my objects are. All right. I know the difference between seeing into the nose. I'm gonna also put in my shadows that I see, right? Because this is going in, the nose goes in, right? Hear my cat crying, I'm sorry. Knowing that my eye sockets aren't perfect circles. I'm kind of trying to find more of those shapes. Usually it's like a 1, 2, 3, they're all about the same size. Okay, and we're gonna do a demonstration on this tomorrow as well. But you can see how kind of brushy I'm being with this. I'm gonna start laying in value quickly to show where my marks are going in space. And it's a lot of careful measuring, right? Because I'm looking at my proportions of how big, how tall is this? How wide is this? How big is the nose in comparison to the eye sockets? They're close. It's a lot of the same. All right. When it comes time to drawing things like teeth, sometimes it's easier to do a quick shade in and then do some reductive marks just to start giving myself some ideas of where the teeth will be. But again, details like teeth come at a later point. It's more important to get all of these shapes accurate first and foremost, okay? I'm gonna do one more. We're gonna call this straight on. Okay. Let's do one more and we're gonna do it completely in portrait, essentially. Now, drawing a skull in portrait means turning it on its side. Now, instead of a circle, I'm gonna do more of an oval, right? It's the difference between an oval for this shape here versus a circle for the front of it, okay? So when I'm looking at it from the side, and then I'm gonna kind of measure those sharp angles. Okay, so this right here, this line is still my vertical axis of chin to forehead. I've got my eye line, my nose line, and my jawline. Now when I'm looking at it in portrait, it becomes really important to measure this negative space here, right? Because you can see that's what's gonna help me find my shape. And you can also see that Scully here has a pretty gnarly overbite sometimes. So it's important when it's in perfect portrait right? That you find that negative space. I'm starting to find kind of some of my shapes. My eye socket. You can see that there is this kind of negative space shape, right? And when it comes to things like the jawbone, again, finding these negative spaces, sometimes it's easier to draw this negative space than to draw these positive spaces, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm focusing on drawing in my negative space. actually draw in this overbite because I'm drawing what I see. Okay. And I'm still focusing a lot on drawing in my negative space. I can see into the nose a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. Moments like there's a screw there, draw through it, right? Draw through my shape and erase my negative space back out. Okay, again, I'm not drawing teeth yet. I'm not worried about the teeth yet. I'm really concerned about getting my initial shapes accurate, okay? That's my big concern today. The big shapes in your skull and the big shapes in your background objects, all right? So again, so this is kind of a, let's make a note here, a portrait view. Ooh, sorry. And then we've got a 3/4 and we've got a straight on, okay? Very generalized shapes. This is where your drawing should be by the end of the day, but it should include your background, okay? We will go over that tomorrow as well, and there will be images in the handout. All right, thank you, and I will see you all tomorrow.